Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Masterclass. It's Saturday, 5:30 p.m. And here we go. Thank you, Gurdeep, for sharing that little assignment on Happy Teacher today. That's a very interesting experiment you put together. And I'm sure some of you may have seen it. If you haven't, maybe you should check out on happyteacher.in, where she said, reverse the page. So when you give a lot of data to people, sometimes it frightens them. But then once you start playing with the data, it becomes very interesting. And that's exactly what we learned from this little post which Gurdeep has so beautifully designed. It's called Reverse the Page. It was posted this morning on happyteacher.in. Let's start with the chapter today. So now we are moving from what we were doing last time about discovery learning, the science of failure. It's part 2 of the book. A 15-year-old high school student passionate about basketball tried to get selected into the high school team. When the results came out, his name was not on the list. He was told he was not tall enough. Devastated and feeling like a complete failure, he was almost ready to give up. His mother convinced him otherwise. From then on, he used his disappointment and failure as motivation. Far from letting failure demoralize or destroy him, he harnessed it to spur him to train harder. As he said, whenever I was working out and got tired and figured out I ought to stop, I'd close my eyes and see that list in the locker room without my name on it. And that usually got me going again. The rest is history. Michael Jordan went on to become one of the greatest basketball players of all time. So he overcame productive failure. Even as professional basketball player playing at the top of his game, Jordan was no stranger to failure, honestly admitting. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I have been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed. Jordan is just one example of many who have experienced the trials and tribulations of failure in their lives and come out successfully. Such stories are not only inspiring, but also demonstrate that it was failure that led to learning, and learning that led to growth and success. In doing so, they reveal the underlying mechanisms of productive failure, which will form the focus of chapters 3 to 6. It is easy to see that failure activated something in them and helped them see what is critical and essential. Stripping away all else, failure made them aware of who they were and what they really wanted. Helped them focus. Failure created the affect, AFFECT, the motivation to push harder towards the focus. And with the right help at the right time, whether from friends, family, coaches, or mentors, they managed to put it all together, assemble it, and made their failure productive. This is the secret now. Activation, awareness, affect, and assembly. The 4 A's at the heart of productive failure. Let's take a screenshot of this page. I have taken it. In case you want to take it, please take it. Activation, awareness, affect, and assembly. The 4 A's at the heart of productive failure. In the problem-solving phase of productive failure, students generate multiple solutions to the problem. But as expected, they fail to solve the problem correctly. This, however, results in a strong activation of the cognition system because it activates relevant prior knowledge needed for learning. Failure is crucial here, as it also builds awareness of a gap between what we know and what we need to know. This awareness, in turn, drives affect. Needs, interest, curiosity, motivation, and emotion are all part of affect. To learn from subsequent instructions, take a moment, pause. Let's look at this figure P.1. P.1. The 4A's mechanism driving productive failure. So how it happens is you have to first do an assembly, then climb up to awareness, then there's activation, and finally affect. Affect is what is the game changer. Sorry. With activation, awareness, and affect all set up and aligned in the problem solving phase, we are now ready for the instruction phase of productive failure. For this is when an expert or a teacher can help assemble our knowledge with the correct concepts and ideas. What seemed to be failure in the problem solving phase can thus be bootstrapped for deep learning, making it not just kind of failure, but productive failure. In part 2, I will describe the science behind the 4A's mechanism and explain the string of experiments that discovered how and why these mechanisms form the scientific basis of productive failure. So the 4A's, Gurdeep, would you like to repeat them? Manisha, would you like to repeat the 4A's?
Yes, sir. Gurdeep ma'am is writing, she's attending.
Okay. So the 4A's, I go back. They are assembly, awareness, activation, and affect. Now, these 4A's will be actually studied deeply in part 2 of our study of productive failure. That's where we are today. 4A's mechanism and explain the string of experiments that discovered how and why these mechanisms form the scientific basis of productive failure. That said, the mechanisms are fundamental in nature. That is, they apply in all learning situations, whether you are learning by yourself, working in teams, or designing learning for others. Different ways of learning invoke these mechanisms in different ways and to different degrees. The point being that not all ways of learning are equal. Certain ways, like productive failure, are particularly good at optimizing the synergetic effect of the 4A's. And that's what makes productive failure powerful. So I think today we'll focus on activation. So that's how we start, because activation is the key. Only when there's activation will you have assembly or effect on either side. Assembly is down below and effect is right on top. So the assembly has to reach effect. That can only happen with activation. So let's see what activation is all about. What if there was a simple trick or a hack to help you remember things better? Indeed, there is. But to illustrate and appreciate it better, here is a memory challenge comprising 9 statements. Each statement is about someone doing something. Your challenge is to commit all 4 of them to memory in about 20 seconds. Ready? Go. Shaurav wrote a play. Jean made a discovery. Lara ate an apple. Carol pressed the light switch. Ken set for sale. Vivek made a movie. Petra sang a song. Clarence played football. Karen performed a dance. You have 20 seconds. Have a look at the list. Now, without looking at the list, try and recall who did what. Write down your answers and then compare how many you would successfully recall. Who wrote a play? Who made a discovery? Who ate an apple? Who passed the light switch? Who pressed the light switch? Who set for sale? Who made a movie? Who sang a song? Who played football? Who performed dance? For most people, this is a tough task. You're not alone. There are 81 combinations if you cross who with what they did. When I have done this quick and dirty experiment with people, on average, they can recall about 5 such combinations correctly. Because the order in which I ask the questions is the same as the original order of the sentences. People recall the first few and the last few sentences better than the ones in the middle. However, if they are particularly into some of the domains, for example, movies or sports, they might recall them better. Still, overall, average performance is typically around 5 items. What if I told you that another list of 9 such items similar to the original one, I could make you remember all of them effortlessly? Not only that, this time I would make the challenge much harder by jumbling up the order in which I asked the recall questions. So here are 9 more statements similar to the original list as before. Your challenge is to commit all of them to memory in about 20 seconds. Ready? Go. Shakespeare wrote a play. Einstein made a discovery. Sorry. Adam ate an apple. Edison pressed the light switch. Columbus set for sale. Spielberg made a movie. Madonna sang a song. Messi played football. Michael Jackson performed a dance. Now, without looking at the list, try and recall who did what by responding to the questions below. Write down your answers and then compare how many you could successfully recall. First question, who set sail? Can anyone recall this? You can write in the chat box. Who sang a song? Who played football? Who wrote a play? Who ate an apple? Who performed a dance? Who performed the light switch? Who made a movie? Who made a discovery? Note that the order in which I ask the questions is not the same as the original list. It is much harder now because I have jumbled it up. But even so, you are probably able to remember all the sentences and quite easily too. As an external stimulus, it has similar demands on your memory at the first one. Yet, most people can recall all the items perfectly. What changed? Clearly, the names of the people doing the various things. I changed the names because of certain assumptions I made about where in the world you are reading this book. If you are in the West or Western educated context, the second challenge would be easy because of prior knowledge you would likely to have about the various well-known people and their domains of expertise, from Michael Jackson to Albert Einstein. These priors are likely to have high storage strength and high retrieval strength, making it effortless for you to remember them. But if you do have these priors, then the second challenge would be equally difficult as the first one if I had kept the order of the questions the same, and even more difficult because of the jumbled up order of the questions. Of course, given all this, in the English language, the base assumption is that you have a good grasp of the language itself. What is instructive is that simply by changing the task at hand, by designing it in a way that activates your prior knowledge, the task becomes easier. And it does not matter if it is a simple memory task or a complex interpretation of a poem. If it is learning abstract mathematics or analyzing historical text, if it is learning a new language or to write an essay, activating relevant prior knowledge is the key to processing new information and learning. That begs the question, what are the ways in which one can activate prior knowledge? Are some ways better than others? And why? We are ready for the multiple ways that can be placed on an activation spectrum. The activation spectrum. Suppose you are learning a new language by yourself, say French, and you encounter the word bibliothèque. Your mind starts scurrying its vast storage of information, asking connections. If you have knowledge of other languages, it might latch on to similar words in the German, bibliothèque, or the Spanish, biblioteca. But what happens if you're completely new to these languages? In that case, you may have to cast an even wider net, perhaps to English, which I presume you know if you are reading this book, and connect with the English word bibliography. A list usually found at the end of books, thereby helping you infer that bibliothèque might have something to do with books, leading you to understand that it means library. This is the basic mechanism by which the mind processes new information. It always tries to find and connect to relevant prior knowledge that we have. Recall, the prior knowledge holds the key to both seeing and connecting, and that is the way to deep understanding. If we are unable to find any relevant prior knowledge to connect, processing the understanding new information becomes extremely hard. For example, learning Mandarin when only you know English, which will be hard because there is a little connect to it. Sorry, still doable, and people do learn. But this is kind of learning that would be hard for a non-native Mandarin speaker. On the other hand, if we can find a lot of relevant prior knowledge, we would find it relatively easier to process new information and learn. The most relevant knowledge we can activate, the easier the process, the better the learning. This is why formal education settings, a teacher may use a range of strategies to activate learners' prior knowledge when teaching them something new. On one end is a teacher, like I used to be, who might believe in giving a clear, engaging, and structured lecture on the new concept. The lecture may include examples designed to create students. On the end is a teacher I used to be, who might believe in giving a clear, engaging, and structured lecture on the new concept. The lecture may include examples designed to activate students' prior knowledge, with explanations to help them process new knowledge, the absolute minimum a teacher ought to do. Another teacher, say in teaching reading, might start the lesson by asking students to share their personal experiences related to the book's topic. If the students are about to read a story about a trip to the beach, the teacher might encourage them to recall and share their own beach experiences. This strategy not only makes the upcoming text relatable, but also activates their prior knowledge about the beach, setting the stage for a deeper understanding of the text. Anyone wants to add anything here? Manisha, you want to add something?
No, sir.
All clear so far?
Yes, sir.
Or in the literature class, a teacher might use the metaphor of a journey to explain the narrative arc of a story. They might describe the protagonist's conflict as mountains to climb and their periods of growth as smooth stretches of road. Sorry. This metaphor not only activates the students' experiences and understandings of journeys, but also illuminates the dynamic nature of narratives. Like metaphors, analogies can also be powerful activation devices. For example, a physics teacher introducing the concept of electricity might use the analogy of water flowing through a pipe. They could compare voltage to water pressure, current to flow rate, and resistance to pipe size. This may help students understand electrical circuits by linking the concepts to their experiences with water systems, making the abstract notion of electrical flow tangible. Employing real experiences, analogies, or metaphors works by linking the new concept to something similar to students. Of course, analogies and metaphors can backfire too if they are applied literally, but they can be used judiciously to bridge the gap between the known and the unknown, enabling students to transfer their prior knowledge to the new context. Some teachers may go one step further. Instead of merely presenting information or using relatable experience, analogies, and metaphors, they get students to engage in problem solving. For example, consider a math teacher introducing fractions to elementary school children. Instead of going straight into direct instructions, the teacher presents a problem. If you and three friends share two pizzas equally, how much does each person get? To solve this problem, students tap into their prior knowledge of equal distribution and experience common from sharing food or toys. They intuitively understand that each person gets half a pizza, thus leading them to the concept of fractions. Sorry. Following this, the teacher formalizes the understanding by introducing the notation 1 by 2, representing half. The teacher could extend this with further pizza related problems involving adding or subtracting fractions. Through such a problem solving approach, the teacher activates the student's prior knowledge, linking everyday experiences to formal academic concepts, fostering meaningful and lasting understanding. This method not only makes learning more engaging, but also showcases the practical relevance of new knowledge. In all the examples above, prior knowledge is activated in diverse ways to help process new information. Whether you're learning a language yourself, listening to a lecture, learning by analogies and metaphors, or problem solving, in all cases, prior knowledge is activated. But what is different is the degree of activation. In 2009, Michelin Shi, winner of the 2019 Romelhart Prize, which is widely regarded as the Nobel Prize in Cognitive Science, proposed a framework for placing the different degrees of activation on a spectrum. She called it the Interactive, Constructive, Active, Passive Framework, ICAP. Interactive, Constructive, Active, Passive Framework. So ICAP, arguing that interactive activities will lead to better activation than constructive activities, which in turn would be better than active. And finally, passive will be the lowest in the spectrum. Therefore, the higher one is on the spectrum, the better the learning outcomes. We will see in figure 3.1 a simple way to imagine activation spectrum. At the lower end, simpler activities like listening to lectures or watching. So we look at the spectrum. Look at the spectrum. Listening and watching. Rehearsing, highlighting, comparing. Solving, discussing, explaining. Failure-based activation. That is the highest. So instructional videos elicit narrower activations and lower cognitive effort on the part of the learner. On the higher end, complex tasks like problem solving, when designed well, typically engender a broader activation of relevant prior knowledge, but also require more effort and engagement on the part of the learner. Because the more relevant knowledge we can activate, the easier the processing, the better the learning. We can expect methods on the high end of the activation spectrum help us learn better than those at the lower end. I'll pause here for a moment. I want you all to just have a quick look at the activation spectrum and try and absorb it. If you feel you want to make a screenshot, please do. It's a good way of figuring out how you can design your learning in your classroom, how you can actuate deeper learning. Note, however, with all the methods thus far largely focus on activation, that does not deviate too much, if at all, from the narrow path that leads a novice to learn the correct concepts and ideas. The degree of activation differs. There are different points on the activation spectrum, and hence efficacy for processing and learning varies. But all the methods focus on activation of correct ideas and concepts. We can call these activation methods success-based activation methods. In these methods, failure is neither designed for nor desirable. What if we could extend the activation spectrum? Indeed, one way to think about my research on productive failure is that my goal was to extend the activation spectrum, to design even more powerful ways of activating relevant prior knowledge, and in doing so, achieve transformative effects on learning. A direct consequences of the epiphany I had that engaging learning in problem solving that leads to failure prepares them to learn from subsequent instructions was to explore whether such failure resulted in better activation of prior knowledge. Productive failure thus created a paradigm shift by moving from success-based activation methods to explore failure-based activation. Failure-based activation. Why does failure-based activation work? It all comes down to the benefits of generating prior knowledge to learning the target concepts. The generation effect. Imagine that you are participating in a psychological study. Your task first, labeled the generation task, involves a bit of mental effort. You are presenting with a word, for example, rapid, and it's your job to generate a second word. Let's say it has to be a synonym, starting with the letter F, the correct answer being fast. Together, they form the complete word pair. You actively engaged as you presented with several such word pair generation tasks, thinking about relationship between words to generate and pair. Now let's shift to the second task, the read task. Here, you simply given pairs of related words such as bread butter or cat mouse. There is no requirement for you to puzzle out any connections this time. You just read several such word pairs, committing them to your memory as best as you can. You might think, okay, that was interesting, but what's the point? Here comes the twist. After a while, and without any forewarning, you are tested on your recall of the second word in each pair. That is, given the first word, recall the pair. Would you recall the generate or read pairs better? A series of such studies were conducted by Norman Slamica and Peter Graf in 1978. Their experiments showed that participants in the generate group remembered significantly more words than those in the read group, hence the term generation effect. Generating the word requires more cognitive effort and a deeper processing of the information, and a deeper, more semantic processing of information leads to better retention. Several experiments and independent replications followed. Almost 30 years later, in 2007, Sharon Birch and colleagues published a meta-analysis examining the patterns of effects in 86 studies since the 1978 seminal paper and reaffirmed the robustness of the generation effect across a variety of tasks and experimental conditions. In other words, the generation effect is not a random effect found in one obscure task, but an independently replicated and robust effect across a number of studies. And if you recall, that is the same philosophy. A failure-based activation, students are asked to generate multiple representations and solutions to challenging problems before learning the required concepts. The act of generation itself, therefore, is one of the reasons why failure-based activation works, but it cannot be the only reason. Sorry. Why? Perhaps not immediately obvious, but it is easy to argue that generation effect works as long as you generate the correct response. As noted earlier, the generation task was supported in two ways to increase the likelihood of corrected pairs being generated first. First, participants were told the relationship between the pairs, for example, that they were synonyms, rapid fast, or antonyms, long short, or associative, bread butter, and so on. So, given the first word rapid, you would easily think of synonyms fast or quick as the second word. Additionally, they were given the first letter of the second word as well. Therefore, if the first letter of the word was F, then you are more likely to generate fast. Or if it was Q, then quick. This was a clever way of keeping errorful generation to a minimum, reportedly only 6% in the seminal study. However, that makes one wonder if generation alone is sufficient, or must it be generation of correct responses? Maybe it should be called the correct generation effect, for it raises the possibility that maybe generation that involves generating incorrect or failed responses may not be good for learning. We need to test the effects of generating incorrect or failed responses as well. We turn to this next. The failed generation effect. Ever had the awkward moment at a party or a conference when someone tells you their name, in an instant it's gone? Poof. Vanished like a ninja in the night. It is a weirdly universal experience, as if our minds have a secret trapdoor where names fall into the abyss as soon as we hear them, trying to recall if the person who we are just introduced to was a Sarah, a Sam, or what was it again? It's like trying to catch fish with your bare hands. You think you have got a good trip, and the next moment it's gone. And the worst part, it happens to everyone. We all forget names. We may not remember a person's name, but we all remember what it's like not to remember. So here is the question. Can we do anything about this name amnesia? Maybe it's about paying more attention. Maybe it's about paying more attention or repeating the name a few times in conversation. or many other memory techniques advocated by a number of gurus. Perhaps there is a simple one. Imagine a party with new rules where introductions are turned on their heads. The name of the game is no longer introducing yourself, but guessing the name of the other. You can introduce yourself to someone only after they have tried to guess your name. So if I am at such a party, the following might ensue. Me, hi, are you Julia? Stranger, no, I'm Samantha. Me, hello, Samantha. Samantha, and you are Mark? Me, no, I'm Manu. Samantha, hello, Manu. I've never been to such a party or organized anything quite like this, but it would be fun to try. Because the idea behind it is that when people are given a chance to guess and fail, they are more likely to remember the correct name when they are subsequently told. So then, if they are told immediately, I would predict in such a party, people would be more likely to remember names of the people they met than a regular party. The basis of a prediction is that in the literature, it's called the unsuccessful retrieval effect, or simply the failed generation effect. Attempting to answer questions about some topic before learning improves learning, even if the initial answers were incorrect. Simply designing opportunities for people to guess and fail helps them learn the correct information. Later, an idea demonstrated beautifully by Nat Cornell and colleagues in 2009. Imagine the same word pair study by Slameka and Graf, but with a twist. Instead of designing word pairs to make it easy for participants to generate correct answers, Cornell and colleague designed to make it hard for participants, so much so that people would generate the incorrect answers. Whereas Slameka and Graf use strongly associated words. Example, rapid fast, long short, governed by the rule, synonyms, antonyms, and supported with the letters starting rapid F, long S. Cornell and colleagues use weakly associated words such as mouse hole, whale mammal, without giving any rule or starting. This clever trick ensured that most people would fail to generate the second word most of the time, and the word trick worked. In their experiment, they used 60 word pairs, and people could generate the correct answer only one or two of these pairs, or an average of 1.5 times out of 60. Said another way, on average, participants got 58 to 59 answers out of 60 wrong. This is high failure rate. Perhaps one might have better success rate at guessing the names of 60 strangers at a party. But for any experimental demonstration, having such a high failure rate was perfect. So have a close look at the drawing, at the graphic, figure 3.2. Take a pause. They calculate the time. So when you read and they check the recall post-test. Similarly, when you test, and what happens when you have word and word pair, and you have word pair alone. As shown in figure 3.2, they randomly assigned participants to one of the two conditions, the read condition or the test condition. In the read condition, participants were shown a word pair, example mouse hole, and given 13 seconds to study it. In the test condition, participants were shown the first word of the pair for 8 seconds. Example mouse, during which they were asked to generate the second word. If they could generate the second word in 8 seconds, great. If they could not, it was captured as a blank. Then the correct answer was shown for 5 seconds. So everyone got 13 seconds for each of the 60 word pairs. Participants in the read condition studied it for 13 seconds, and those in the test condition tried to generate an answer in the first 8 seconds, and only then was shown the correct answer for 5 seconds. After the 60 trials were completed, participants were given a distractor task unrelated to the word pairs. They were asked to list the names of as many countries as possible in 5 minutes. Distractor tasks are often used in psychological experiments with the goal of keeping the participants' mind busy so that they do not rehearse or think about the material that was just presented to them. To capture the experimental effect, one needs to ensure that people do not have the opportunity to think about or rehearse what they have just learned. Or if they did, one would not be able to tell apart the effect of the experimental manipulation from that of the rehearse. A quick distractor task is therefore often deployed between the learning and testing phase. Finally, in the testing phase, participants took a cued recall test of all the 60 items. The first word of each pair formed the cue, and participants had to recall the second word. As you might have guessed, participants in the test condition performed significantly better than the read condition. On the cue recall test, failed generation followed by immediate feedback is much better than studying the same material for the same amount of time. But if failure was indeed driving the learning, a final nail in the coffin would be the check if people did better on the items on which they had failed than those left blank. Being unable to generate is not the same as generating an incorrect answer. It turned out about 3/4 of the time people generate incorrectly. 1/4 of the time they left it blank. And indeed, the final nail in the coffin was that people recalled incorrectly, answered items better than ones they left behind. It is not simply generation, but failed generation that resulted in better recall and learning. Like in that part, I would remember Samantha as Samantha better if I first guessed her name incorrectly as Sarah or any other name really, and then be immediately corrected. So if you were to doubt about organizing the party with the new rules, these findings should be encouraging. The failed generation effect has since been replicated in other learning contexts as well. For example, in 2014, Rosalind Potts and David Shanks from the University of London wanted students to learn the definition of 60 unfamiliar English words, such as Valanche, Frampole, and so on. The definition was essentially in the form of synonyms of the unfamiliar words. They designed 3 types of learning trials: study, choice, generate with each words. So what we will do, we will just take a snapshot of this figure for you to think. And we will pause here because today's been a lot of reading and hard reading. We will put a bookmark here. We will continue talking about figure 3.3 next time. I want to share one small thing before you go. Today is the last day of the month, and on our Joy of Learning diaries, do you see the calendar, Manisha?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the plan for the month of June is here for the teachers who wish to join us. You're all welcome to join us on Sunday. Sunday, as Manisha mentioned in the beginning of this session, on 1st June, Amardeep Singh is coming. Amardeep Singh has produced The Travels of Guru Nanak. We are watching episode 18 tomorrow. In My Good School, we are reading the book, The Door to Door Bookstore. And we're reading a book, क्या आपका बच्चा दुनिया का सामना करने के लिए तैयार है? So this book is being read right through June. Feel free to join us. It's in the morning, 10:30 to 12:30. There is a Yes workshop end of the month where we have Shikha Agnigotri joining us from the Right Side Story. We are talking of child rights, bullying, etc. with her. The Teachers Academy moves on. We meet on Thursdays for the Thoughtful Thursday sessions on music, art, and poetry. We meet on Fridays for the Brewing Knowledge sessions, reading My Good School, where passion meets education. And we meet on Saturdays like we do today for the Masterclass. We do have a weekly meeting on Wednesday, and I urge the school GSA coordinators to try and join this WhatsApp call. All our links are shared in the WhatsApp community in the respective groups. And above all, there is a Good Schools of India journal which sends out a weekly publications every Wednesday. And whatever we have done above, starting Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, is actually chronologued in the weekly, which if you sign up, you will get by email. Do we have any questions anywhere? Nisha, any question?
No, sir.
Gurdeep, you want to add something? Is she there?
Yeah, Gurdeep ma'am is there.
Yes, sir, I'm there.
Yeah, you
So
want to
that
add
time
something?
when you asked question, I was attendee, but then Manisha ma'am promoted me as panelist.
Good.
So I don't want to add anything, but just I'm so happy to read this that like most of us struggle with remembering names. Earlier, I used to think that I'm the only one who is struggling with remembering names of the people.
Yeah. So, when you said struggling names is a challenge?
Yeah, like remembering names.
Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. So what you're saying is right. It's very important that this challenge happens. What you saw today as productive failure is indeed an interesting method. And I'm sure some of us can try that.
Yes.
I would like you to post the 4 A's in a post today. Would you be able to do it?
Yes.
Yeah, and little summary of the session if you can write down today.
Yeah, sure. I'll do that, sir.
Yeah, just do that so that gives people time to think. It gives people time to plan. Maybe they can take some cues from here and design their productive failures.
Sure, sir. Sure.
So thank you everyone for joining us. Anything in the chat?
Tanuja ma'am is asking for the bullet points for completion of all 5 assignments. So I was about to say this. Today's session was wonderful in the sense that it'll be helpful in writing everyone's assignment. And for the bullet points, I'll post in the group.
Yeah, you can bring them down because we have shared with Tanuja directly on email as well as we have in the Sunbeam Masterclass. You can bring them down, no problem at all.
I'll do that.
Yeah. Then there are people, there's nothing else I think in the chat. How to research on the same group in 2 ways is the point. Who wants to answer this?
On the same group in 2 ways. Like you can have the different perspectives, I believe, so that you'll be able to research. It's like if I'm helping somebody else to research, so my perception and the other person's perception, our perceptions are different, I believe. So it's not the same. It depends actually on the topic which you have taken for your research. And that is how we'll be able to do that. Right, Sandeep, sir?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you. It's a good evening read. You can replay the video so you won't lose anything which we read today. The video will be available by late evening. Thank you. Have a great evening. Enjoy your Saturday. See you next Saturday. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.